better just double check that this doesn't also end up on my channel like it did before.
Nope, it's starting now. It's starting now. Should be...
Oh, so you don't have to press go live?
No. There we go! We are live! Hi guys! Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here then hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Emma and this is...
Colin.
And what's the name of your channel, Colin?
I am from the English Language Club.
That's it. Well done for
Thank
introducing yourself. I see that quite a lot of people are already in the comments, so hello and welcome. Do tell us where you're from, because as always I do like to know where people are from, so hello. I saw that someone said before, where was it? They were from Chile? No, that was just in their name, yeah. That was it, from North Yorkshire. Hello, Ibrahim from North Yorkshire. Or North Yorkshire, I want to say. Lionel from Costa Rica. That's really nice. We've got Hossein. I'm really sorry if I mispronounced that. From Algeria. Do you want to read a few? Welcome some people.
Yeah, somebody says, good day, mates. That's Fabio. I'm not sure if he's from Australia.
Good day. Yeah, you're from Australia. I shouldn't do that. I have a terrible impersonation.
I think we should clarify because Pravin says, hello, Mum. I want to join your English Language Club. So just to clarify, English Language Club is my YouTube channel and Pronunciation with Emma is yours. We are collaborating on this live stream and the one that we just did a few minutes ago on my channel. And I hope that we'll do some other collaborations in the future.
Yes, I hope so. Well, we'll see how this one goes. It may be a disaster. But
the last one was alright.
So far it's been going well. It's been going well. But yes, so we did do a live stream on Colin's channel about half an hour ago. So if you want to go and check that out, go and check out his channel. I put the link in the description below.
And both our channels are about teaching English, but we do have distinctly different sort of approaches, so it's worth subscribing to both if you aren't already. If you want, yeah.
So going back to a couple of people here. Arthur's from Peru. Hello Arthur, nice to see you again. Nina's from Holland. That's the first time I've ever seen anyone from Holland in the comments. Yeah.
Mirand from Albania.
Wow, hello.
And Claudio from Brazil.
We've got someone from Swindon.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Arthur said, are you in Bristol? Well, yes and no. We're
not far.
We're in a top secret location.
Yes.
We'll
as you can see from the view from the window.
We're in London. No, we're pretty much in Bristol, yeah. I'm still in Bristol anyway. Got some people joining from the English Language Club from your channel, so that's really nice.
Great.
So hello to you, new people. That's nice. From Dubai. It must be late in some people's countries. Like India. What time is it there? It must be, I don't know, a few hours ahead.
Yeah.
In the future. What's the future like, guys? Is it good? Has Brexit happened yet?
Probably not.
No, we'll still be waiting. We'll be doing another live stream in 2 years. 10 years, we'll still be waiting. But anyway, great. So lots of people joining in there. So in today's video, it just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it, when you're doing live streams and stuff. In today's live, we're going to be talking about your grammar and pronunciation questions. So I did ask you guys on social media, what questions do you have about English, whether it's about grammar, pronunciation, whatever. Colin and I are here to answer those questions, or we're going to try and answer them. Some people said it's nearly midnight in their countries. Wow. Yeah, it's quite late.
Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for staying up.
Yes. Or maybe they're in bed with a Horlicks. You probably won't have Horlicks in many countries. What is Horlicks? That's a very English thing.
No idea. Yeah, it's a very English drink. It's a bit like a hot chocolate, but it's not chocolate. I don't know what it is.
It is malt.
Oh, right.
It's malt. Yeah, let me type that in the comments for you guys, then you can translate that. But yeah, it's made with malt, and you add milk or water, and it's typically like a drink that old people have at night time before going to bed.
Well, I think back in the day, everyone used to have it.
Did they?
It's like it's a bedtime drink.
It's a bedtime drink. So yeah, they'll be in bed with their Horlicks now in Dubai. Okay, so what I'm going to do firstly, guys, is answer some questions from Instagram, because there were some really good ones on there, so I want to pick some of those. And then if you've got any questions during this live stream, put them in the comments and we will try and answer those as we go along. So let's see.
There is one here. Diana has said how to use at, in, and on in English. It's difficult to say that.
Yes, a huge topic.
And it is, yeah. I mean, it's difficult to just read that question because it's got so many at, in, on.
Yeah.
Yes, and that it is a huge topic. Prepositions are a very big subject that lots of people have lots of problems with, and it's very difficult to kind of come up with rules that will, because there's always going to be so many exceptions. There are rules out there that you can follow, that you can look at, but there's always going to be so many exceptions that's what makes it difficult. So it's not something we can just answer quickly in a quick live stream like this.
No,
there is no quick fix. We'd need a whole series of videos,
Yeah.
And even then there'd be edge cases that we'd leave out. So with that, yeah, I don't think we'll say any more about that. Other than watch this space, I guess it's something. It's something I want to get into. I do want to do some more a good series on prepositions and things.
The thing is when people ask me, am I have problems with prepositions? They don't specify the kind of prepositions, because there are different types of prepositions. So you have, for example, prepositions of place. So like, is it on the table, on the floor, on the wall? Is it in the bag? Is it in the wall? And so on. Are you at the door? Are you on the door? Things like that. So that's more preposition of place, and that can sometimes be tricky, because you can say, oh, well, it is on the table, it's on the surface, or it is in because it's inside, at because it's a general location. But then you've got those confusing ones like, are you on the corner, in the corner, at the corner? Because all three are possible, but they all mean different things. So it's something we can talk about.
And then obviously that's prepositions of space, but you can also use in, at, on, the same prepositions in the context of time.
Yep.
On time, in time, at a certain time. And then it's, the same words, but in a completely different context with completely different meanings. So that's the other confusing thing, that we use the same words in different contexts with completely different meanings.
Yep. Just to confuse people.
Yeah.
Basically. And then you've got the horrible one where it's just prepositions that go with verbs and there's literally no rule for it. You've got things like phrasal verbs where you literally change the preposition and it changes the meaning entirely. Get up is different to get on, get off, get over, get under, so on. And so, yeah, that can be a bit of a disaster. I tend to find that's the one people have more problems with.
Yeah, so you can see what a can of worms this is. And by can of worms, if for those of you who don't know, I mean it's something that just gets worse and worse the more you think about it.
So don't.
Yeah,
don't think about it.
You have to think about it in the right way. It's good to be systematic and, and I would say, because there are so many exceptions, try to just learn the basic core things, rules, and then at that point you have to stop trying to learn through rules, because there is no rule for the exceptions. You have to kind of learn the exceptions naturally, and then you just let them absorb as you observe people using them, and then emulate that, and it just takes time. Yeah,
that's it. That's the main thing. People want to learn English now. Want to be fluent tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it really takes some time, doesn't it, to learn any language? I guess this leads on to a really nice question that Ahmed asked. I've just lost it. Teachers believe... Oh, sorry. Let me rephrase the question because it's phrased a little difficultly. So basically, Ahmed is asking, how should English grammar be taught? Which is an interesting one, because this is something that even academics can't agree on. When I was doing my masters, and academics were like, oh, it should be this way, and then others were saying, no, teachers shouldn't even really teach grammar. They should allow students to simply absorb it. And so I don't know. It's
what we got to remember is that each individual student is different, and everyone's brain is wired differently. And I think that there is a kind of scale. There are the people at one end of the scale who are think very logically, and for those people, kind of studying the grammar and understanding how it works, or to what extent it works logically, is useful. And I'm more on that end.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other people who are not like that, when they try and understand the rules and things, it just doesn't make any sense. It just confuses them and they get frustrated.
That was like me with German.
Right.
So I've been there, guys.
Okay, so for you, it's probably better to learn just more naturally through listening and trying things out, trial and error. So I think it's a silly debate for the academics to have. They need to realise there is no one right way to teach things, because it depends on the student.
Mm-hmm.
On the individual student.
It does, yeah. And also kind of why they're learning, because I feel a lot of the time if you're studying for an exam, maybe having the grammar, I'm just kicking everything. Maybe actually knowing the terms, so things like, learning the difference between past simple, present perfect, past perfect continuous, present perfect continuous. As soon as I start saying these words to some people, they're like, whoa, I don't know what these words mean. And that's fine, that's absolutely fine, because they probably absorbed the language in another way.
Well, exactly. If you say those words to a native speaker, they won't know what you're talking about necessarily, because that is not part of English. It's part of grammar, which is the academicization of English. So it is useful as a kind of to study the language, but you don't necessarily need to know it to be able to speak the language. Mm-hmm. But depending on how your brain is wired, you might find it really useful, but you might not. And again, the important thing is do what helps you. If you find studying grammar useful, then do it. If you don't, if it confuses you, then you shouldn't feel that you have to keep persevering with it. And I think that's a mistake a lot of schools make. They force people to try to study in a way that isn't the way that they learn.
No, exactly. That's the problem with some schools that have 30 kids in one classroom.
Yeah, you've got to.
You can't always.
There is no one method that works for all of them.
No, that's not. I'm going to take a couple of questions from Instagram, because I don't want people thinking she's forgotten about us on Instagram. Someone asked earlier, where was it? They were asking about thinking in English. So this person asked, Naraujo, I really don't know if that's their name, but I am sorry. So they ask, Emma, do I need to think in English in order to speak it? Do I need to think in English in order to speak it?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking everyone in the comments. Tell us.
Well,
this is quite a tricky thing, actually, because I get asked a lot, how do I think in English, firstly? And I think that's something that comes with time. That's not something that I can train you to do necessarily. I can't just say, this is how you think in English, and then you go home and you start thinking in English. You need to start changing things in your life and your everyday routine that kind of start training your brain to start thinking in English. So simple things like reading a book, reading a chapter each day, or switching your phone into English.
That's what I was going to suggest,
Yeah, little things like that can definitely help. And over time, you'll start to think. What you'll find will happen is you'll be speaking your native language. I don't know if you ever had the same problem with Spanish. I know I do. But I'll be speaking my native language, which is English, and then I want to say something in English, but the English word isn't there, but the Spanish word is there. And that's the moment when I realized, okay, this is weird, because now my brain is no longer going to the English compartment. Something is happening, and it's starting to think in Spanish.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've ever had that, because you can speak some Spanish, can't you?
Yeah, a little bit. But I'm a little bit more, I don't know, maybe cynical about the whole concept of thinking in English, because I've seen it used as a kind of marketing head, tagline.
Yeah.
There was one school when I was working in Paraguay, and they said, if you come and learn with us, you won't just speak English, you'll think in English. And I'm just like, it doesn't work like that, And it's just, but what I do think is thinking in English is kind of a level. It's just the level that you get to. I mean, in Spanish, maybe my Spanish isn't that good that I think in Spanish so much. But maybe when I was living in Paraguay, I did sort of think a little bit in English, but not completely.
Yeah. You mean think in Spanish?
That's what I meant. Yeah. Is that what, did I say English?
You said think in English.
Sorry, I meant think in Spanish. Yeah. So
I would expect you to think in English. Yeah.
Yeah, it does happen, but I don't think it's something that we should be trying to do. I think it just will happen when your English gets to a certain level, as long as you are immersed in an environment where you're using English a lot and you're surrounded by English. So it still may not even happen if you're living in another country. Even if your language does get to that point, you might think you might think in English when you are studying, you're with people and you are studying, but then when you go away and you're with your other friends or your family, you stop thinking English. So it's not really something I think people should think about. I think it will happen if it happens.
You shouldn't think about thinking in English. That's Colin's advice, guys.
Yeah.
Stop thinking about thinking in English. No, but you're right. People panic about things and they preoccupy themselves with things that are just not important. You know what I mean? But anyway.
There's a good question here. How can I recognise phrasal verbs easily if they are separable or inseparable?
That's funny because that question was going to be my next one after, just before this one actually. Yeah, okay. Someone asked about this on Instagram, so thank you, Diego.
Okay, so how can I recognise phrasal verbs? Well, but you mean specifically whether they can be split or not. There is a rule about this, which is I just can't remember off the top of my head what it is.
You're asking the wrong person.
So let me think about some examples. Okay, yes. So I think it's something to do with. Let's take an example. Take off is a phrasal verb. Now, an airplane takes off, or you can take off your jacket, or you can take your jacket off. But a plane doesn't. You can't take a plane off. So it's separable in the context of a jacket, but not separable in the context of an aeroplane. Now, in the aeroplane context, you're not using the verb literally. You're not taking, but with a jacket, you are taking. You take the jacket off. It's a more literal meaning. And where phrasal verbs have different meanings, there's always one that's more literal and one that's more metaphoric.
Yeah.
So I think, as a general rule, it's the more literal meanings that can be separable. But again, there's going to be lots of exceptions, and you need to look at each one individually, really.
Yeah. I do recommend that students, when they're reading, I push reading so much because people do not do it enough. They just neglect it. And my next question is going to be about reading. That the more that you read and the more that you expose yourself to language. So if you really hate reading, have a look on Netflix. There are some really nice plugins. I can't remember the name of one plugin that I use. I'll have a look later. I'll put it in the description. But there's a plugin you can use where you can show two sets of subtitles. So you can have the English subtitles and you can have the ones in your native language. So when I'm watching things in Portuguese, of course I have them Portuguese and English. And that's how I'm able to pick up new words and phrases and things like that. So what you can do when you're reading and everything, whatever, watching TV series, is take notice of how they're using all these phrasal verbs in what context. Because if you're just memorizing lists of phrasal verbs, that's not how we learned them. We learned them from doing exactly what I'm telling you. We just watch TV shows and just maybe asked our parents, Dad, what does that mean?
Or just pick it up from context.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah, exactly. There's a really good dictionary, though. If you're not able to get it from the context, sometimes it can be tricky. I recommend the Macmillan online dictionary. I'll put that in the chat, actually. Not sure how to spell it, actually. I think it's like this, Macmillan. It's completely free, and it's the best dictionary I've come across for phrasal verbs. But do be warned, sometimes phrasal verbs have more than one meaning.
Normally they do.
Yes.
Not sometimes.
Normally they do, yeah. So just be aware of that. Make sure you also look at the different definitions and you don't just take the first one. Take the definition which best fits the context where you found that phrasal verb.
Yeah. So it's not so much a question of which phrasal verbs can you split and which ones you can't. It depends on what context you're using them.
Yeah, as well, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can only get that through just listening and reading and listening and reading, listening and reading. That's it. Input, 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 so that you're able to produce output. That's a theory, you know.
Is it?
Remember that. Yeah. The more input you have, the more you can produce output. Seems like a simple theory.
Makes sense.
Because it works. So, related to that, someone asked me on Instagram, are there any books that you recommend about British culture? So, not about books in general, but about British culture.
About British culture, I guess.
There's a really good one called Watching the English. Do you know about this? So it's called Watching the English.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Maybe I heard about it through your Instagram. Didn't you put it on Instagram?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you go to my Instagram page, you can see me reading sections of it there. Watching the English is good. Or there's another one called The Xenophobe's Guide to the English. Can you think of any more?
Yeah, Bill Bryson did a book called Notes from a Small Island, and that's a really good sort of Americans' take on English. So the differences between Americans and British culture, not the language but the culture, because he's actually lived for quite a long time in the UK, but he's an American.
Yep.
And he's an excellent writer as well. So I'd recommend that book if you're interested in British culture.
Yep.
But it's weird, like British culture. I don't really think about British culture. It's just
it's so mixed, isn't it? When people
again, there's lots of different cultures.
When people talk about British culture, I mean, I have friends who are from where are their families from? From Pakistan. And so their culture, even though their parents, well, I think their grandparents were from Pakistan, then they moved to England, their parents were born here, and then there's my friend. Right. And then their culture, the way that she talks about her life is so different to how I talk about my life and how I grew up and my culture. I think many people think about England as, we sit around drinking tea and
those are the stereotypes, aren't
they? But it's not the case.
Yeah, and there are stereotypes that are very old that don't really exist in the real world very much. And I think and Harry Potter, if you look at the Harry Potter books, they kind of draw on those very old Britishness in a way.
It's so typical, isn't it?
It's
like stereotypical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a sort of Victorian element in there, I think, which is not really what you won't get that in if you come to the UK much these days.
They're quite posh, aren't they?
Yeah.
Very posh in Harry Potter. We don't normally speak like that, do we?
No.
It's a little bit weird, isn't it? It's like when people tell me that they want to speak like the Queen, and I tell them, no, don't do that, because no one speaks like the Queen besides the Queen, even though you like that accent.
Well, related to that, there's another question from Shamad K, who says, as a non-native English speaker, which accent should I prefer? Well,
That's interesting.
You prefer what you prefer. Your own preference is your own preference. But what you mean is which one should I learn, or which one should I focus on? What do you think?
British, of course. No. Like, to answer this question, it is learn whichever one you want to learn. Because at the end of the day, you are not going to exit your English class and speak like a Brit. You're still going to have your own accent. Let's imagine you are a Spanish speaker. You are not going to sound British from day one. Your accent is going to be Spanish.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
And that's fine, exactly. Yeah, you said exactly what I was going to say. That's fine. You should not be ashamed of it at all.
Okay, but it might be that what they're getting at is between American and British English. That
maybe more the dialect. Like, what words should they learn? Should they be learning pants or trousers or biscuit or cookie? The thing is just learn English. Just learn it, because even if they come to the UK and they say something like cookie, we still know what they mean.
We still understand what they mean.
Exactly. The same if you go over to America and you say, oh, do you like my trousers? People will be like, oh yeah, I like your pants, you know.
Yeah. But
Like,
I do think though that British people will understand American better than Americans understand British, because of movies and music that is so dominated by Americans, that we're obviously a lot more exposed to American English than they are to British English. But that's, it's a minor thing. So I mean, maybe it depends a little bit about why you're learning English. Do you want to study in America? Maybe you should probably learn American English. But if it's for the UK, then learn British English. But if it's not either of those things, then just learn whatever you prefer. If you like us on YouTube, then learn British English, because that's what we're teaching, because we're in the UK. But if you find another YouTuber that you like more than us, which you probably won't, who's in America, then you'll learn American from them. But really, you can learn both. It's the same language. It's just slightly different vocabulary that's favoured in one place to another. And I've talked about this before in a video, that talking about American English and British English is an oversimplification, because American from New York is very different from American from Texas, and that's very different from American from California. British English from Bristol is very different to London, and that's very different to Scotland, So, but then there is what we call RP, received pronunciation, and that's kind of what I always try to teach. And that's what I think my actual language since teaching has sort of become more RP and less London. I don't know about you. Has your accent changed? Do you think the way you speak has changed?
Definitely, yeah, because this is not how I normally speak. If I spoke to my dad like this, it'd be like, oh, you sound really posh.
Oh, right.
So, yeah, this isn't how I would normally speak. I had to change, because when I was in Spain, I remember I had a very strong accent, and I once said to like a group of students something like, when you go to pub, and this one boy was like, teacher, what is pub? I was like, okay, I need to change my accent, because he's finding it difficult to understand me. But of course, not everyone's gonna do that. Not everyone's gonna change that accent for you. So yeah, but someone did make an interesting point earlier. What about the difference in saying first floor, ground floor? It is different, so it can be confusing. If I'm honest, natives even make this mistake. There are times when even I've said, oh, it's on the first floor, when actually I mean the ground floor.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm trying to think of some other examples like that, but...
Yeah, I mean, as a general rule, in the UK, we have the ground floor, and then if you go upstairs one floor, that's the first floor.
Makes
and
sense.
Then it's the second floor. No, it's because the first floor that you come into will be the ground floor.
Oh, it's the ground. And then you've got the first.
Yeah.
It's more logical in British English.
Yeah. Well, anyway, but in America, they talk about they don't have a ground floor. The ground floor is the first floor. So, but I've also, when I was living in Paraguay, I think actually some buildings it was one way, other buildings it was another way. Yeah.
That's interesting. Is Cockney accent used in formal speech? Did you ever hear any
Cockney accent
formal Cockney?
Formal speech.
Sounds a bit of an oxymoron, doesn't it? But it's like a posh Yorkshire accent doesn't quite exist, does it?
Yeah, but being your accent and whether you're being formal, you can be formal in any accent.
Exactly. This is what people are sometimes confusing is accent
register
and
an accent. Yeah,
that's it.
So, what was the question? Is there?
Can you have a formal Cockney accent? Is Cockney accent used in formal speech?
You can be formal in Cockney.
Yes.
If you just are, if you're speaking in a more formal way.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to be formal? Let's talk about that. That's probably.
It's through the choice of language. It doesn't matter whether I speak with a Yorkshire accent or a more neutral accent. It depends on the kind of words that I use. That would convey the formality, wouldn't it, rather than my accent?
Yeah. And another thing is in formal language we tend to be less direct. So we might, instead of saying, "What's the time?" I might say, "Excuse me, do you have the time?"
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So yeah, as a general rule, being less direct makes you more formal, and obviously that's got nothing to do with whether you're talking in a Cockney accent or a Scottish accent. They're very different things. You can be formal or informal in any accent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that pretty much answered that one. We have some really interesting questions coming through. I'm not going to answer any more from Instagram because a lot of you guys are answering the same ones here in the chat. So no more from Instagram there. So if you do have any questions, let us know, because there are so many questions coming through. So we're so sorry if we're not able to answer all of them, but there are a lot. So yeah, do be patient if we're not answering your question. We are sorry.
It's just a lot. I'm getting a lot of people saying what they prefer, the British accent or American. Most people saying they prefer British accent. That does unsurprising, seeing as they're on our
Makes
channel.
sense. You are following pronunciation with Emma, and I.
Yep.
Is are from England. I am from England. So. Had a problem conjugating there. A lot of people have been asking questions. I've seen like through the entire live stream about articles. So asking about the, and un. I don't know whether that's the pronunciation or whether it's the use, but we could talk about the use of that a little bit because it's been popping up by quite a few people. So, I mean, when you're talking about something in general, you would use a or un. Let me type those in the comments for you. So you've got a and then you've got un. If you have a consonant sound coming after the article, then you will use a. So you have a, for example, a table, okay? Table starts with a t. It is a consonant sound, so it's going to be a. If I have a vowel sound, then I'm going to use un. Now notice how I'm saying vowel sound, not vowel letter, because there are problems with students seeing, for example, the letter E, and they think, it's a vowel, but actually it's maybe pronounced as a y sound, and y is considered a consonant sound in English.
Yes,
you know?
a yellow.
So if I say, for example, a European, okay? A European, I am a European. So even though it begins with an E, it begins with a vowel letter, it actually starts with a y, like this. A y, European, a European. So yeah, would be like, an would be like an apple. Because a is a vowel.
Yeah.
But then, that's when you're talking generally. When do we use the?
The. Well, so the, if you're talking about something, a specific thing, as opposed to an or a, yeah, because you could have an apple, but it could be, it doesn't matter which one it is. But if you're talking about a specific apple, that is the apple that I ate. No, well, you wouldn't really say that.
This is the apple I'm
going to eat.
I am going to eat, yeah.
Yeah, this one, not the other one. You know, there are some apples. They're all an apple, but this is the one that I'm going to eat. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's the definite article, because it's more precise.
Yeah, you know exactly which one you're talking about. That's basically it. I think the one thing that confuses people is when we start talking about, for example, countries which have articles, because in some languages they have articles for countries, and in English we don't. But
yes.
we do have some, like the Philippines, the United Kingdom, the Alps. I know the Alps isn't a country, but it's a geographical location. And so this can confuse some people. So yeah, you just have to learn those, guys. There's no solid rule for those. One person did tell me, it's if it's for a cluster, like a group of islands or something like, or a group of something, like a group of mountains, but I found many exceptions to that rule, so it's tricky to say. Any other questions, guys? Shank says, love your voice. I don't know if that's my voice or your voice.
Both of us.
It could be
I think we
plural
both
you.
have nice voices.
Yeah. So, any other questions about any topic? Can be pronunciation, can be grammar. If we've missed your questions, then do feel free to put them in the chat again, because we probably have missed them. But yes. What's the best way to improve your speaking skills? One person here suggests just speak. Speak all of a sudden.
Yes, yeah. That is the best advice.
This is
really.
the only way. Yeah, some people
and don't be afraid to make mistakes. You know, that's how you learn. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough, and that goes for everything, not just learning a language. If you're if you're trying to, if a baby's trying to learn to walk, you know, if he never falls over, it's not, you know, then he's not trying hard enough.
Yeah. you make it sound like you need to push him. Try harder. But yeah, this is the thing is, there was one analogy that I read that was quite nice. I can't remember who it was from, but they were talking about making mistakes and riding a bicycle. You know, when you get on the bicycle the first time, you don't know how to control your balance, and so you fall, you scrape your knees, you hurt yourself, but you get back on that bike and you keep going, you keep going, and you keep going, you keep persisting. And language learning is the same. Just imagine falling off a bike is making a mistake. You know, you make a mistake, but you get back on that metaphorical language bike and you keep practicing.
And the good thing is, when you make mistakes in English, you're not likely to break a leg. So
no,
you know, there's really nothing to be afraid of.
No. This is something I keep saying to people: make mistakes because you're not going to die. No one has ever died from making a mistake and saying...
Well, not in English. Not in learning English.
No. No one has ever made a mistake when, I don't know, accidentally confusing tenses or something and saying I goed instead of I went. Yeah. No one has died from
but it is an interesting point, though, because yes, you need to make the mistakes, but you also need to be in a context where you will be corrected constructively. Because I work with a lot of people who speak English as a second language, and you know, I hear all sorts of mistakes all the time. I don't always correct them because that would get annoying, and it's not the right context in my day job, which is completely unrelated to teaching. Yeah. You know, it wouldn't be appropriate, but sometimes I do if I feel like it is, you know, if it is appropriate, and it's normally quite well received. And people say to me, "Oh, people never correct me. I've been saying that for years. I've been saying that wrong, and no one ever corrects me." So, I guess if you're in an educational situation, if you're in a class or something, then obviously your teacher should be correcting you, and then those are the times where you really need to be pushing yourself and, you know, just saying what's on your mind and seeing if it's they will correct you if it's right. But what about in other contexts? Do you think people need to?
No, they have absolutely no obligation to you to correct you.
No, and often they don't because people are scared. People think, oh, I understand what you mean, so I'll just let that mistake go. And it's only because I've taught English that I know that people do actually appreciate it when you correct them if you do it in the right way. But if I was a regular person who hasn't taught English, then I would be a little bit apprehensive of correcting people's English because I feel like they might be insulted if I do that. So maybe let people around you know that you won't be insulted if they correct you and things like that, just to kind of get that feedback.
Sometimes as well, people don't realise they're being corrected. This has happened in some of my classes when students have said, "Emma, why don't you correct me?" I'm like, "Mate, I correct you all the time." "No, you don't." But their idea of correction is being literally corrected in that moment when they make the mistake. So pay attention, because what a lot of native English speakers will do is they'll basically repeat back what you said. So let's imagine Colin, he says something like, "Oh, yesterday I goed to the shop." I say, "Oh, you went to the shop." So notice I repeated what he said, but I corrected him. And a lot of people do
you
this.
Model the correct.
That's it. It's so much less invasive as well.
Yeah.
And because English people, we don't want to. We don't want to upset you. I know you won't be upset, but it's just how we are. We don't like being direct.
Yeah.
So we tend to go for this method.
So the listening and speaking go hand in hand.
Yes.
So listen carefully as well, and try to emulate what you hear if it's different from what you would say yourself. And then if it's right, you'll kind of get a sense of if it's been understood better than normal. And then you'll know, and hopefully that will, become the way you do it from then on.
Hopefully.
Yeah. There's another good question here. S4V1K says, "Emma, my accent sounds mostly German, even though I'm not from any German country. What am I doing wrong?"
That's really interesting, because if they say that they sound German, that means that they're making certain mistakes that German speakers would make. So very typical ones are, for example, confusing a and e. So a lot of German speakers, they don't say apple, they say apple, because they don't have a in German. So yeah, they'll say things like het instead of hat, like the thing you put on your head. Another mistake is the w and the v. So instead of saying things like village, they'll say willage. Another thing is like the th sounds, but that's kind of a universal one, you know, changing them for z and d. So instead of saying like that, they'll say that, you know, things like that, or even dat. It kind of depends where they're from in Germany, I think. But
so focusing on these particular phonemes that perhaps are not used as much in German as they are in English, and it's probably the case that those sounds, phonemes, are not used in your language as they are in English, in the same way they're not used in German, and that's why people are getting you confused with German. So yeah, focus on those, and I always say pronunciation is physical. If you're saying something wrong, it's because you're doing something wrong with your lips or your tongue. So focus on that.
Exactly. It could also be a case of intonation. You know, maybe you're kind of speaking in a way that Germans would in their native language. So when Germans speak, it tends to be a little bit more like this. Like they tend to go up and down a little bit more. Does the intonation sound a little bit more Swedish? But it's a similar kind of intonation pattern. As well, what's good to know is that German and English are both stress time languages. So that's also good to have a look at. Have a look at some videos on stress in English, sentence stress and word stress. You could also be stressing it in the wrong way. I do have some videos on my channel about sentence stress and word stress, so that could be something to take a look at. So yeah, have a look. This person as well has been asking a lot through the live. Oh, I've just lost their question. It was something about linking vowels and vowels. So yeah, Khalid has said, what about vowel linking in RP? Do I need a book or a website? No, you don't need a book, you don't need a website. You have us right now. Do you know much about linking, vowel linking?
Well, to be honest, this is the kind of level that my channel doesn't really go into.
Yeah.
Of phonetics, but I think you probably do a little bit more
because
you focus more on phonetics. I sort of dabbled in phonetics to the extent at which I think it's helpful for people learning English as a foreign language, but it goes much deeper than that because it is a whole academic subject in itself, and it's that level is something that I'm out of my depth. So it's not something I know about.
You're passing that question
on
to me.
That's my way of saying you need to answer this question.
Yeah, so basically when it comes to vowel linking, what this person is essentially asking is, when you've got two words together in a sentence, when the first word ends with a vowel and the next word starts with a vowel, they link together.
Right.
Okay? So they link in three ways. They can link with a w, a y, or a r. So with the y, we'll start with that one first. With the y, it tends to be when the first word ends with what we call a spread vowel. Now, I can tell by Colin's face. Spread vowel. A spread vowel is essentially when your mouth is spread. So it's like E, so A, I, E. These kind of what I call smiley vowels. I do have a video about connected speech, specifically about vowel connected speech, that I did with Sabra, and she also called them smiley vowels. So that's also on
So they
my
would
channel.
be on the phonetic chart that I do use quite a lot. They would be the ones on the left-hand side.
Nope, not always.
But E, yeah.
Because you've got like the diphthongs as well.
Well, yeah, but the diphthongs are on the right-hand side.
Exactly.
Oh, and some of them are, some of them.
And we
do
use some of them as
No,
well.
but I mean the left-hand side of the vowel section.
What do you want about?
Okay, forget that. Maybe I'm wrong.
We just use the vowels, including the monophthongs and the diphthongs. We use both of them. So yeah, diphthongs like a. If I say, I'm trying to think of, if I have the sentence like say it. So say ends with a diphthong. Say.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say say it, and I'd link it with a yeah.
Yeah.
Naturally. Say it. The next one with were, this is when the first word ends with what we call a rounded vowel. So it would be sounds like ooh, and then diphthongs like ow, oh. So your mouth is ooh, it is this rounded shape. So if I said something like go out,
then you add a w.
I add a w.
Go. Yeah, because you can't. It's very difficult to say go. Well, the w is kind of go. If I just said go, it's there. It's there.
It is. It's almost like a kind of unreleased w.
But then it becomes a wow when you add out. Go out.
Go wow. Yeah, you're kind of like half pronouncing a W, aren't you, with the first one? And then the last one with r. So this tends to be when you have more relaxed vowels. So ones like schwa, so like as in doctor. So if I say something like the doctor is, you notice when I pronounce it separately, I say the doctor is. I don't pronounce that R at the end of doctor. But if I say it together, it would be the doctor is. The doctor is busy.
Doctor is, yeah.
The doctor is busy.
Now, I've got a question on this.
Okay.
All of the stuff we've just talked about, actually, it is physical. This is why I always say pronunciation is physical. And the reason we link these words, these sounds, is because at the end of saying go, our mouth is in this shape, physically, and at the beginning of out, it's,
needs to open.
Yeah, it needs to open, and then and the actual sound that you make when we say wow, we do that is that's why we make that sound. It's physical. It's not something that we're trying to do. It's just the nature of the fact of the physicality of where the shape that our mouth is at one point and to what it is at the next point. So really, this should just be happening subconsciously.
Yeah.
We don't really think about it. So should people be thinking about it when studying English?
Yes. And I'll tell you why. But a lot of students, they struggle with listening, and they tell me, oh, native speakers, they speak way too fast.
Yeah.
But actually we don't. English is one of the slowest spoken languages. The fastest are ones like Japanese. If you're talking about so there are two ways to measure the speed of language. Is it the message communicated, or is it the number of syllables
that you have to actually pick up on? Yeah.
So for example, if you're talking about the number of syllables, the fastest languages are like Spanish. Spanish is one of the fastest. English is one of the slowest. I think below English is German. So German's a little bit slower than English. So English speakers actually don't speak fast. We don't. You probably speak way faster in your native language. So when we listen and you think, oh, but I don't speak fast, I speak normal speed. But it's the same for us. We're speaking normal speed now. If I were to speak like this, it would be incredibly fast, And poor Colin, even he couldn't understand. So, yeah, the thing that people tend to have problems with is things like connected speech, ellipsis. So when we remove words and when we remove sounds from words, we cut them, we use contractions. So instead of saying do not, we say don't, and so on. So it can appear fast, but actually we're just cutting sounds, cutting words, adding sounds to connect words. So sometimes sentences sound like they have one really long word, but actually it's 3 or 4 put together. So yeah, that's why I think it's important. But maybe you think differently.
Again, like we said earlier, it really all depends on the individual. So if you find studying this is really helpful, then you should study it. If you don't, then you shouldn't worry too much about it, unless you've got to pass an exam or something like that.
Yeah.
I think this sort of thing will just come when you learn. If you learn all this is why I focus on the main phonetic chart with the 44 sounds, because you know those sounds and you're getting them right. As you start speaking, all this other stuff will just fall into place. But it is kind of interesting to think about it if you find it interesting.
Yeah.
But not if you don't, and so I don't think it's 100% necessary.
No, I mean, it's one of those things that is like on the to-do list when you're learning, I think, but it's not one of the first things you should learn. Start with your basic phrases and your basic conjugation of to be and things like that. And then as you start getting more familiar with the language, I would say start looking at connected speech as early as you can. I tend to recommend like intermediate level, but Yeah, you need to get in quickly before you start making mistakes and fossilize errors and things like that. Anyway, yeah. So you've highlighted an interesting one there.
One from this person, France avec Rosa and Med.
Hello.
What's the difference between among, although, even though, despite, and in spite of?
Wow. That's a lot of words.
Yes.
There are a lot of differences between all of them. Yes. I think they talk about among and although and...
Yeah, so instead, I think I said between when he'd written among. I think he meant...
Between.
Although, what's the difference between although and even though?
Good.
And despite and in spite?
Yeah.
That's the question.
We got it.
Right.
I'll let you handle this one because
okay.
I think I talked a lot with the last one.
Although and even though. So those are quite interchangeable, aren't they? Although I like chips, I don't eat them every day. Even though I like chips, I don't eat them every day. You can use them exactly the same there. Although has another use where you can say like I just used it then.
It's kind of like however.
Yeah, you can be used like synonymously with however. And then despite and in spite.
In spite of.
In spite of, yes.
Yeah, the little of there. I'm highlighting that not to correct you, but because people miss it.
Yeah, that's good. So, okay, yes. Well, it's good that you got the of because that's important. Despite, I'm just trying to think of an example question because then it becomes easier to explain it. So, despite the weather, I still like England.
Yeah.
In spite of the weather, I still like England. So that in that context, they're very similar.
Despite and in spite of are pretty much interchangeable. I did a live lesson about this. I think it was last week or the week before. There is no difference in terms of how they're used. I researched just in case there was some special case or something like that, but there's no difference between them.
Which one of those do you think you use more often?
Good question.
I think I definitely say despite more often than I would say in spite.
Yeah, I think I would, but maybe that's simply because we're a bit lazy and it's just one. Like despite
the weather. Do you think
maybe
in spite of can be a little bit more emphatic? You say in spite of that. It's a bit more emphatic than despite that.
It could be. It's tricky, isn't it? Because it all depends on context. Depends on stress. How much do you emphasize that? Well, despite, and then you're emphasizing it, aren't you? Well, in spite of that, then you're still emphasizing it in the same way. I would say they're the same.
Okay. So in other words, the answer to the question is don't worry. Well, what's the difference? They're pretty interchangeable, so don't worry about it too much.
We might have to make this question our last one.
Yeah, we've gone on quite a long time. It is an easy question.
It is. Yeah, that's why I'd like to finish off with this one. But we could probably accidentally talk about it for another 20 minutes. But yeah, this one's a good one.
Please suggest some British TV shows.
We were talking about TV shows, weren't we, earlier? Some TV shows that I really like, some British ones. I've recently started watching Peaky Blinders, and we were talking about this and whether it lives up to the hype. That's a good phrase. I don't mind it right now. It seems to be okay. I see someone's recommended Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
The problem with Peaky Blinders is that the accent is from Birmingham, and the accent in Birmingham is incredibly strong. I have to have subtitles on, because I find it really hard to understand what they're saying. So, like, I was actually watching an episode today, and this one guy said something so fast, I had to press the button to, like, skip back to 10 seconds. It's like, what did he just say?
Yeah, so I would say that's probably not the best show for picking up, the English accent.
Yeah.
Because it's also set, in the past, and it's a kind of slightly antiquated Birmingham accent as well. It's not necessarily a modern one as well. So that's not going to be the best one. I like Game of Thrones. I think, although it's kind of an American show, there's a lot of British actors most of the actors are British, and it's filmed kind of all over the world, but there's a lot of British actors, so a lot of British accents. So the accents in Game of Thrones are pretty good. Even some of the American accents are kind of anglicising their voice for their character. So yeah, I think from a language point of view, Game of Thrones is quite a good one.
Game of Thrones is good. Another one that I recommend that's very clear is The Crown.
Okay, yeah, I've not seen that.
Yeah, I've not seen that either because it's not really my cup of tea, is The Crown. I don't know, I'm not really into that kind of stuff. It's like Downton Abbey, you know, it's...
Well, Downton Abbey would be another good one.
It would.
Again, and then there you get to see kind of... Because the whole thing about Downton Abbey is the kind of... the juxtaposition between the posh people upstairs and the working class downstairs. So you get to sort of see the two.
Like the two different accents. They tend to be more like northern accents as well. The people that were working under the house in the basement. Someone suggested Monty Python. That is something. It's quite old as Monty Python, though. I'm trying to think of like more recent things, but Monty Python is something. Yeah,
but the accents I don't think have changed. They're very, even though it's an old show compared to Downton Abbey, the accents in Downton Abbey are deliberately antiquated, whereas I think the language is more modern in Monty Python, even though it's 40 years old.
Yeah, 40 years old, really?
Maybe no, I don't know, 30. Yeah, I think
is it that old?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Started in like 60s, 70s.
Yeah, no, that would be right. Yeah, no, that's true. Someone recommended Sherlock. Now, I don't mind Sherlock, but it, again, is quite difficult. He does speak incredibly fast, that even I had to have subtitles on because he just spoke unnaturally fast. So, yeah, I found that tricky. I'm trying to think of some other ones.
The Office? The British The Office would be quite...
Oh, yeah, that's... The humour, though, people might not understand the humour.
Well, we'll see.
That's one, yeah, The Office. But make sure you look at the British edition, because there is the American one.
Well, there's lots of, the American one is...
One I definitely recommend, though, which has a mixture of accents, is Black Mirror. I really like Black Mirror, but I'm really into like dystopian fiction. So
yeah, it's very, every episode. Nice. I could never watch more than one episode of that at once. Like, you can't binge watch Black Mirror because that would just be too depressing.
You'd never leave the house and you'd disconnect your internet.
Someone suggested Mr. Bean, but the whole thing about Mr. Bean is that it's all visual.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a great show, but you're not going to pick up much English from it.
Exactly. I use Mr. Bean a lot in my in my lessons, because it kind of forces the student to speak and describe what's going on, because there are only actions that are going on. But yeah, someone recommended Sex Education. I really enjoyed this. It's quite funny because it's very Americanized. Have you heard of it before?
No.
It's on Netflix. It's good. Watch it.
Okay.
So it's basically about this boy whose mum is a sex therapist, and he's just like this really quiet, shy boy, and he doesn't like that kind of stuff, you know.
Right.
And it talks about kind of his life, but it's a little bit weird because everyone is British, but it has a very American vibe to it. So as people are watching it, don't think that our schools and things are like with all the lockers and things like that, like they have in American schools. It's very, very Americanized. I think what they did is they said, you know what will help this get more views with the Americans? Some, classy British accents. And so they added those for some charm. But yeah, it's very good. Other ones, you'll not regret watching Outlander. I've not seen that. Heard of it. Not seen it. Oliver Twist.
Miss
That's
Marple.
a bit of an old one.
Well, that's the more movies. The question was specifically TV shows.
It was. Yeah.
Miss Marple. That's quite another old one. Oh, another good one would be Inspector Morse. That was filmed in Oxford, where I used to live.
Really? Yeah, that's an old one.
Yeah.
What was that really old one that was on in like the 90s? Inspector Frost or something. There was that guy with a mustache.
David Jason. Oh, well, speaking of David Jason, then Only Fools and Horses.
Was he in Only... Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Only Fools and Horses is a good one. I'll write that down as well. Someone's recommended Top Gear. Yeah, if you're into cars, Top Gear is one, definitely. Yeah. Gordon Ramsay. If you enjoy swearing, Gordon Ramsay's one. But yeah, I can't remember the one I just said before. What was it? Only Fools and Horses. Yeah.
But I mean, TV shows, there's so many different types. You just got to watch what you like, really.
That's the thing, yeah. I recommend stuff to students and they're like, oh, I didn't like that. Like, well, you asked me to recommend you something, so I did.
Yeah, I can only recommend what I like. I'm not going to recommend something I don't like. That would be silly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, watch what you like. And if your English ends up emulating that, then that's absolutely fine.
No, exactly. Yeah, someone recommended Peep Show, The In-Betweeners. I also want to add IT Crowd. That's a really good one.
Good show, yeah.
I love IT Crowd so much. I think I've watched it 3 times, like the whole seasons, all the episodes.
I've only ever seen little clips, but I've never really watched a whole episode, but I know that I would like it. I just never get time.
Yeah. That's life though, isn't it? Never having time.
Yes.
Speaking of time. That was a good transition.
Yeah.
Speaking of time, we've kind of run out, guys. So I'm really sorry if we've not been able to answer your questions. Don't worry. What you can do is put them in the comments of this video, not the live chat, because the live chat will disappear. But when the video is over, when the live is over, just put your questions down in the comments below and I'll try and get back to you.
And I'm really sorry that we didn't get a chance to use my big mouth.
I know.
To illustrate some sort of that pronunciation is physical.
I know.
Anyway,
never mind.
That will come into a future video of mine.
In the future. Anyway, thank you very much for being a guest here.
You're welcome.
So yeah, go check out his channel, guys. It is English Language Club. As I said at the beginning, I will leave the link to his channel down below, where you can also watch our live from earlier on Colin's channel. So we talked about, well, goals and things like that, didn't we? So go and check that out if you want a little bit more practice. Also, yes, I like Cassia's suggestion. That's a really good one. I can't say it out loud because YouTube will be like blocked. But yes, that's a really good TV series. Don't say it out loud. YouTube will... It's got a bad word in there, guys.
I thought she was just really upset that the live stream's ending.
Oh, it's the end of the world. No, it's a really good TV series. I definitely recommend it, and it's British. So, yeah. Okay. Colin's a dentist. Okay, well, thank you very much, Colin. Thank you, guys. I will see you very soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.